Yeah, it really has been surprising how much time he spent on foreign policy. I mean, he was gone overseas for a good chunk of the government shutdown. There's definitely a question within Republican circles and folks concentrating on 2028 to understand why the president is international so much when his agenda and his campaign was so much more designed to be focused on the USA. And I think we're about to enter a pretty substantial sea change in terms of political coverage and who we focus on. There have been at least half a dozen stories about the 2028 race just over the weekend. I think J.D. Vance is the clear front runner. I also hear from Republicans that there's not even going to be a primary, that they're going to sort of anoint J.D. Vance going into the midterms to get voter enthusiasm out, get voters out to the polls in 2026. And I think we're definitely moving in that direction. The international focus is easy compared to domestic focus. It's a lot easier to do that than to get legislation through Congress.
Well, if J.D. Vance is going to be promoted, sooner rather than later as the next choice here, when does President Trump become a lame duck?
I think it's already happened. I think that the shutdown made that really plain when the president just was not in D.C. very much. He was certainly either in Mar-a-Lago or international and focused on Israel and Hamas and other issues that were not associated with either the government shutdown, the Tuesday election, or the state of the U.S. economy. And I think that's about to change, particularly as the street gets a whole bunch more data from BLS and other agencies that we've been lacking. I don't see you being able to run away from an economic focus. So I would say if you want to see, where the Republican conference is going, see who picks up the mantle of focusing on the economy while everyone else is distracted with other things.
And it does seem that the administration, maybe since those elections in Virginia and New Jersey, is now kind of focused back on inflation and now even maybe pulling back some of these tariff levels here. So is this going to play politically for this administration?
The tariffs are uniquely unpopular. As we've said from the jump, the American public is actually very aware of what a tariff is, and they know their taxes, and they know they don't like them. So getting a message out about the tariffs has been inordinately difficult for the president. And as the last 10 months have unfolded, people have just liked the tariffs less and less and less. Even the president's core constituency base of white male voters disproportionately have a negative view of the economy and in particular the tariffs and trade and his international approach. So my position and what I shared with clients this weekend is that I think as we get into the calendar of 2026 and the midterm election cycle, and the Supreme Court repeals the International Economic Emergency Powers Act tariffs that the president has across allies and foes alike, it's going to be more difficult for the president to replace that revenue and those tariffs with any other statute. I don't think you're going to get support or buy-in from anybody running for 2028, and it's going to be even more difficult for 26.
Okay, but Henrietta, look, you're in a corner booth at the Capitol Grill in Washington. Not that I've ever been there. You know the movers and shakers. What's the level of Republican panic right now after the election over the decline in purchasing power of Americans?
It's a huge problem, and they're messaging around it. And they're saying, we're going to do these $2,000 rebate checks. Trust in Trump. Next year is going to be better. We're bringing manufacturing back to the U.S. It's going to cause some pain. It's a lot like what we saw in the president's first term when they talked about farmers needing to be the first line of defense. And you still have pockets of the U.S. economy and the U.S. voter base who believe that the president's trade agenda is correct. But the pain is really remarkable. And as you see the K-shaped economy, as you see folks worried about grocery prices and electricity bills, it's just pervasive. It's the top 3 issue for all voters across the board in every single poll by a country mile. It's not even close.